What's up, the internet? My name's Chase Reeves, and I do bag reviews and product reviews most of the time, but at the end of my videos, I tend to do a little ramble, and I thought, why don't I just ramble? You know what's always pissed me off the way that we have to work. I'm frustrated with how work has sort of felt. And I've been a full-time creative working for myself for a long time now, and for the last year or two, like really on my own, just making videos on YouTube, which is so much fun. YouTube as a job is so much fun, and it's tons of burnout. It's tons of the hamster wheel of constantly needing to make more. It's full of that, like, that question that I was just listening to a fighter talk about this. When a fighter, I mean, can you imagine being a fighter, like an MMA fighter? I've never been into this shit. I've never been into boxing or anything, but just recently, man, I saw a fight and I was just like, what would that be like to just enter the ring and go like, go. That moment where it's that fierce, that ferocity, and that just like, it's you or me, and that we're going after it. Anyways, this fighter was talking about what it's like when you start to realize you're no longer either, you know, peak performance or tip-top shape, or just like, you just can't compete, or you're not the greatest fighter in the world. The thing that's kept him going for so long, being like, I'm the greatest. Now that feeling is gone. You lose that confidence. And the fighter was actually talking about how that's a good time for a psychedelic journey, which is cool, guided psychedelic journey. But I don't like work. I don't like what work has felt like most of my life, even though I've done the creative work. And creative work's fascinating, man. To do creative work for a living, it's epic. I studied advertising for a long time. I worked in some, mostly just marketing agencies. Creative work is actually a very spiritual kind of idea to me, because we're trying to navigate meaning. At the end of the day, we want to have a feeling that we've contributed to something valuable, maybe. Maybe that's how you think about it. I don't know. Maybe I don't even think that far. I just want to feel good at the end of my day, right? And I find that when I can look at the work that I've been doing, or the activities that I've participated in, or the effort I've exerted, and see there's something meaningful that's come from that. My favorite form of meaning is like making someone laugh, making someone have a deep kind of I hope that some of you are watching this and going like, fuck yeah, you're speaking my language, because I just think that connection, in a weird way, we're more capable of that than ever in the multimedia world. But it's like, actually rarer than ever. Work to me has often felt like a grind, like you've got to grind out. You know what, there's this great spiritual teacher named Eugene Peterson who wrote this book about the spiritual path, and he called it The Long Obedience in the Same Direction. This is his like, hey man, you wanna know what it's like to be a spiritual person? It's a long obedience in the same direction. Now, he was writing, I think, mostly for people who are working in, you know, in ministries and stuff like that. But that's a common thread in what I call, you know, grounded Christian mysticism, or Christian spiritual discipline, or just any kind of spiritual path at all. The Hindus, yogis, Zen, Buddhism, all have this sense of, hey man, it's a long obedience in the same direction. And that is maybe another word for the grind. Now, I've settled myself to the idea that like life feels kind of like a grind. Do you have kids? If you don't have kids, there's like this thing that happens when you have kids where you're like, oh shit, like my whole life before was like pretend. It wasn't, right? But it feels very much like, oh my gosh, something shifted. You know, like what makes birds know how to fly back to their like place, their breeding grounds, just like magnets in their head or some shit? Well, we got like magnets in our head or some shit. When we have kids, it's like something shifts. It's like, you don't actually have to have physical children to have that sort of thing. You can kind of get woke to some meaningful plight in the world, right? Or you can just get like trapped in those silos of the web that are just like Bitcoin and banking, and the future is like, that's another kind of like getting woke to something where you're just living in this silo of maybe the future's gonna come like that, and that feels meaningful. It feels like, well, it feels like it matters. And this is my challenge with the grind, with the long obedience in the same direction, which work has often felt like. Spiritual path, long obedience in the same direction ends up being worth it, because At the end of the day, you take your 5 grams of mushrooms, or you have an hour a day meditation practice, or you have a Kundalini yoga practice, or you have some practice of meditation that you're spending time in sort of the ether, in the nothingness of in your brain stem, right? You're just like a central nervous system flittering in the buzz of solar flares. And from this place, you ask yourself, what am I? What is there? What should I be spending my time on? I love that exploration, right? I love the question. And I think part of our jobs as, you know, monkeys on this planet with opposable thumbs that can build spaceships is to satisfy ourselves with the question of that, because the certainty we crave in so many places in our life, right? How much do you wish you could be certain that you married the right person, or that this person you're courting is like the right person for you, or that this job that you're in is the job for you? We crave certainty. It's like a kind of ego thing. We long to know for sure, but so much of the spiritual path, that long obedience in the same direction, is simply satisfying yourself with the uncertainty, right? I love death. It's a hell of a sentence and a non sequitur, but I love death. I mean, there's something to love in death. And if you've lost someone really close to you, know that grief is like the big teacher. And another way, having kids, magnets in your head, like, whoa, shifts everything. Losing someone and really feeling the finality of death is huge shift, was a huge shift for me. And you know for certain that your death is coming and the death of everybody you love, right? It can feel really sad, but there's certainty in it. And yet there's so much uncertainty when, where, how, and it's totally unfruitful even to think about it, right? I mean, it's fruitful to get specific about the sense that you are going to expire and that this time is limited, and here you are right now in this body with this stuff happening around you, and you can choose to contribute to, you know, the positive vibes, or just, you know, remain cynical. And the thing I think that makes work so challenging for me is we have to get money. We have to earn. We have to pay for things. Now, once you start making enough money in your life, or so I'm told, that question shifts and it becomes one more of like, what is our species? What is this planet? What should we be doing in the world, right? What should we be occupying ourselves with as humans? But this is a question of privilege, right? This is a question of people who can get far enough away from just the pure survival stuff in making money that you can actually think creatively about your life. This grind for money causes a myopic sort of focusing effect that I dislike personally. I can use it if I have coffee. If I have coffee, maybe some CBD, I can just grind away in that same direction. I can have that long obedience, and especially so if the company, if the organization, if the mission that I'm serving is one that I can like sit on paper and go, hold on, is this meaningful? Does this matter? Is this something I'm personally connected to? Yes, yes, and yes. Do the people I work with, do I like them, right? Does this look like, yeah, no. If I've got that intact, I can kind of grind it out in that direction. But I find that when I'm most relaxed and when I'm most creative, that's when it's the most fun to do things, and the most fun to come up with the ideas, and the most fun to produce on those ideas. And oftentimes, I don't know how to make money from it, right? Work sucks. Creative work is a little bit better, but it does turn into a hamster wheel, depending on the kind of creative work. I don't know how many of us can actually expect to be successful in our creative work such that we don't have to worry a ton about whether or not we're making enough money. I can imagine being that author, filmmaker, TV show writer, roller coaster designer who has had such enormous and tremendous success that that we don't have to think about what we have to do next. There's money in the bank, and the money there is actually being stewarded well. We're investing in things. As Jay-Z said, I'm a business man. I'm not a businessman. I'm a business man, right? That's the affirmation or the mantra for modern sort of digital, online, maybe even offline, but just performative creative work culture. And in order to be a business man, you gotta figure out this meaning question, okay? The meaning is the medium. The medium is the message. What does that mean? Meaning is the medium. I don't know. I'm just co-opting a phrase from Marshall McLuhan, but there's something in it, this idea that like the thing you're actually swimming in is something about satisfaction, something about meaning, something about matterfulness, something about stuff that matters, something. When you have that, it connects, like you feel grounded, right? When you're grounded, this is one of the things that I learned in the spiritual path, is like, you wanna go and you have these blissy states, you wanna go experience the high experiences, right? But so much of the productive work of spirituality comes from what Jung called shadow work, right? Interacting with and integrating, understanding, grokking, coming to terms with your shadow, the deeper stuff, literally stuff down deeper in your body. If you're going to solve any sort of meaning crisis you have in your life and in your work, in your, you know, think about what are the results of a meaning crisis? Anxiety and depression, right? We've got this in spades. I've got this in spades. You probably do. You've got to satisfy yourself with the meaning that you're finding, right? This is what I love about, as much as I'm terrified every time I step into psychedelic territory, we've got to satisfy ourselves with what is, right? There's so much to just experience in just stopping working, stopping thinking, stopping producing, stopping planning, stopping dreaming, stopping fantasizing. Hold on. It takes a while to learn how to just slow that down, let alone stop it. But just the value in not doing that for some set amount of time, could be 3 minutes, just doing a body scan meditation, going like, what matters right now? Just that I'm here, that I breathe, right? That I have the resource of oxygen to breathe. There's such a practice in satisfying yourself with that. Even as there's a practice in desire and what do you really dream? Satisfying yourself with what is, but part of satisfying yourself is going like, you know what I would love right now? And then just fill in that blank and do it with that kind of, you know what I would love right now? If you're anything like me and a lot of creatives that I know, there's a ton of self-rejection. Right? This is one of the things I dislike about work, is that myopic, long obedience in the same direction, do the right thing, be a team player, can oftentimes capitalize itself on our self-rejection, and I'm cracking the whip on myself to keep this thing going, right? It's like I'm pushing myself instead of being pulled towards. I think in life we're gonna have both of those. Right? And so, you know, don't hate either of them. Be with what is, right? But notice, slow down. Maybe allow yourself to be drawn towards some of the things you're already pulled by. One of the greatest things I ever learned about goals, and I'll finish with this, is my friend Steph Crowder in a course inside of Fizzle, which is a business that I ran, and I was the creative director and co-founder with my buddy Corbett Barr, and there was a whole team, and I loved making that and working with these entrepreneurs for a long time. If you're an entrepreneur who's trying to just get the motivation to keep going, to figure out what to do next, check out fizzle.co. And one of the great courses in there is my friend Steph did one on goals, and the huge insight in that is that you already have your goals. The trick is not to come up with some new version of your goal, like you're gonna like come up with something that you're like, oh yeah, no, that's totally what I want, and then go after it. It's more just like you're externally motivating yourself, like, hey, if you do this, you're gonna feel good about it. Okay. It's like, hey, if you get to the top of that mountain peak, it'll all be worth it, all right? One of my favorite stories, I heard this about Prince. Prince, after he did Purple Rain, huge album, huge movie that he's the star of, right? His buddy asks him like, dude, what are you gonna do next? And Prince goes like, I've been to the mountaintop. There's nothing there. Experienced mountain climbers, mountain toppers, understand that you provide your own motivation. Getting to the top is a satisfying and then there's so much time left in our life before our death. After that, and the question still remains, what good shall we do this day? When you're that fighter and you've been really good, and then you realize the world, the external world, the reality of the external world makes it known to you that like you are no longer in your prime. This is no longer your you're like, you know you're not the best. And take the psychedelic trip, but don't need the other side of that to have this answer that like, no, I am the best. It's a shift. When you reach that mountaintop and you experience the high, and then you come down to the valley on the other side, and you're sitting on your porch wondering what you should do next. The practice is to satisfy yourself, both with what is right now. If you can't be where you are, you won't get where you're going. Right here, right now, practice satisfaction in just what's here. I need nothing. What in this moment is actually lacking? But then there's another side of practicing satisfaction, which is in this, this is why creative work is slightly better than just regular work. I have a feeling that we're all going to be working in, that the vast majority of educated people will just be working in like, Airbnb customer support in the future. And what's killer about that is you can have a kind of confidence that you're gonna keep getting your paycheck. If Airbnb is staying in business, if people all over the world are still, sleeping in each other's houses this way, and it's an actual good service that's connecting something where there's meaning, right? The meaning is the medium. Then you're participating in that big project and you feel good about where the prospects for that. It's like, okay, I can keep doing this task here, this sort of menial labor. I can get my money from it. I can make my wage from this, right? There's a confidence there that in full-time creative work, being on your own, self-employment, you do tend to go like, I kind of wish I had that. But I have a terrible deficit in that I am mostly unemployable, right? And I love creative work. I mean, I could sit down and come up with fun ideas of stuff to do. Whether or not I can make money doing it and, put food on the table for my kids because, magnets. So there's a little ramble for you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, mention it in the comments what resonated with you. I know that it's like we just kind of go around in some like spiraling circles, but we're orbiting this idea around work, meaning, satisfaction. And you can probably be more satisfied right where you are without needing anything else. And you can maybe be a little more honest with what could satisfy you even more. What would be like, what would be a boon? What would be like sick? Really, it's that pull versus push thing, right? So much of just satisfying yourself with this life is getting a little more in touch with your intuition, with the stuff that's pulling you, right? Because you really do have an inner experience that it's amazing how much you can resist, stuff those thoughts, emotions, and feelings, right? It's a real deal. Hey man, it's a real deal. It's a real deal. It's a raw doll. But I like that thing about satisfy yourself. I like that. I think it's something that I could do well to remember, right? Just to satisfy yourself right now where you are. I hope this thing makes sense. I hope you're doing well. Mention in the comments what you thought about this. Like it if you like it, subscribe if you're interested in more. I'd love to answer more of your questions. I've got a Patreon where you can support me because I'm not showing you any products in this video. My kid doesn't get paid, and we don't make money from advertisements on YouTube. Love you guys. Talk to you later.